as we prepare to say goodbye to the month of May, can we just acknowledge that this month has been a very bloody month? The spate of killings that rocked the nation through much of the month. Security people, soldiers, police people shooting up their bosses or the people they're supposed to be guarding, or money lenders or each other. It's just been crazy. Almost every other day there was a story like this in the news. Now, as the month winds up, it seems like those incidents have sort of reduced in the frequency. At least I'm not seeing it in the news as much as we did, in the middle of the month.
There was an incident over the weekend.
Oh, there was?
Yes, in Entebbe at Starbucks petrol station. The guard there shot someone that had come to buy fuel.
Why?
In the middle of the day. No reason. He shot him somewhere near his
All right,
nether.
so I take that back. So it's still it's still continuing. But perhaps the worst instance of gun violence towards Ugandans happened in Somalia, where on Friday, at least 50 Ugandan soldiers lost their lives when Al-Shabab, the militant group there in Somalia, they raided Uganda's military base there. As you know, for many years now, Uganda has been stationed in Somalia, or at least we've been operating under the auspices of Amisom to, I guess, as peacekeepers there in Somalia. While a transitional government is trying to do its thing. I don't know how well or how poorly that is going, but we are there. Our people are there. And at least 50 of them lost their lives when their camp was raided. This attack happened at Bulo Marir, which is a base in the Lower Shabelle. And in a statement on Saturday, the Ministry of Defense and Uganda People's Defense Forces spokesperson, Brigadier Felix Kulaije, he said that they were sending a team led by the Chief of Land Forces, Lt Gen Kayanja Muhanga, to ascertain the circumstances under which our troops were attacked on a dawn raid on Friday. Now, our president has spoken out on this.
Yes.
We saw his statement, and obviously he was very angry, and he, in a way, seemed to blame
our army,
the troops.
Yes.
He acknowledged mistakes made on their part.
Yes.
Their lack of preparation and
Yes.
so forth, which made a lot of people ask, at least on Twitter, I was seeing people asking, but wait, I thought, where does the buck stop? Like, if they're unprepared, or if they're disorganized, who's supposed to be responsible? And people took this opportunity to take swings at Muhozi, who has for a long time bragged about how amazing the UPDF is. They're like, okay, so where is he? What's he saying about this?
So the president said that the UPDF soldiers panicked.
They panicked.
Yes, and because they panicked, they were disorganized and they panicked.
And they were outnumbered.
And I don't know if they were outnumbered, but he says they were disorganized. You see, when it comes to the army, or at least my knowledge from movies is that even if you're in numbers, but you're disorganized, if another force comes in and they're organized and they have studied your defenses, they know where to hit. By the time you organize yourselves, you have already been hit. So that's what the president was saying. And also he said that now people need to understand that going to Somalia, to Amisom, it's not about UN allowances, but to actually do a good job. He said that some people are there, they're not paying attention to what they're supposed to do. They're in it for the money, but it's not about the money. That's what he said.
Well, that's rich. Now, apparently we've been stationed there for 15 years.
Yes, we've been there for a while.
If you have to do peacekeeping for 15 years, in my humble opinion, you failed.
No, you haven't, because you know what they are dealing with. They're dealing with Al-Shabab. At some point, I think there was also Al-Qaeda, stations somewhere there.
Yeah, but this is look, like, history is replete with examples of attempts to engage in peacekeeping in countries where there's sectarian conflict. Afghanistan being a very good example, where the US eventually just had to pull out.
But you see, I still don't think that our army and the armies that are there, because it's not only Uganda that is in Somalia, I still don't think they have failed. They have done their best. But you see, the people they are against, that is the Al-Shabab, are also not like...
What I mean is,
easy.
it's a
like
war.
They
You
have
can't-
resources, they have sponsors. So
Okay,
this
so
is not
what's-
something that you're going to quell in just a year
That's
or
my
two.
point. So what's the winning condition here? What's the goal? There is no goal because
the transitional government has to work.
but that'll never happen because they will constantly be attacked by these insurgent groups who are well funded and are fighting for ideological reasons. They're just gonna keep. You kill 1,000 today, tomorrow 1,000 more sprout. They're just gonna keep. And I guess there will also be foreign mercenaries.
And the challenge with them is that they have nothing to lose.
Yes. So
Maybe that's why it looks like our armies are failing, because they're up against people who have nothing to lose. People for whom death is actually a win. I'm going to heaven.
and they are fighting our troops who are there and who are just doing it to earn a living, to be honest. They're not doing this because they love Somalia. Our guys are there because it's a job.
Because the allowances are good.
You know, can you imagine? So you go through all this and you're busy sending the money back home to your wife.
I know where you're going with that.
Telling her to start a business. I mean, there have been many stories of men who come from the battlefields of Somalia after suffering from PTSD because they've watched their friends get blown up and decapitated. So you come home believing that your wife has now completed the business you sent her money to set up,
or the house
to get there, and not only has nothing been set up,
she's
but
pregnant with another man's child.
there's been, I mean, it's tragic. We shouldn't laugh, but it happens.
It happens, but let me also point you to another part of the world, and that is countries like Philippines, where their women are actually leaving the country to go to Europe and the United States to raise other people's children, whereas they're leaving their children with no mothers. Actually, they're raising a generation of children without mothers. And you know what the men at home are doing? They're siring other children with the women that stayed. So it's never fair. This thing is all around us.
Wow, that's an interesting crisis. Okay, but so back to Somalia. I just feel like I said, engaging in peacekeeping in a nation where there is sectarian violence, especially when the sectarian violence is ethnic, where it's religious, like there's no winning. And as ugly as it sounds, sometimes you just have to leave them to their own devices and leave them to sort it out.
And just like the Americans did in Afghanistan and left that country worse than it was before.
Yeah, you should have just let the Taliban run the country, and if at some point the people of Afghanistan themselves rise up and say we want a change, then let the change come, but don't impose the change from outside.
No, the people of, because not everyone wants the Taliban role, if we were to speak about Afghanistan, but then the Taliban are stronger. So in as much as you don't want their rule, you're going to just have to submit to it because they are stronger.
But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the alternative doesn't work either. In fact, the alternative leads to a worse situation where you want to now send an invading force to fight the Taliban. You see what I'm saying? What has it done for Afghanistan? What has it done for Iraq and every other country where they've tried to intervene? Now, people look at Rwanda and they say, oh, well, if they had intervened back in the 90s, then we may not have had a genocide and lost all those lives. And that is probably true. You probably would not have had 1 million people die in a space of 3 weeks or 100 days. But you would have had 10 million people die in the space of 20 years. In other words, if there had been peacekeeping ongoing, there would have been protracted violence over a longer span of time, leading to more death. Let me finish. So that as painful as it is to acknowledge that lives were lost, would it not be fair to say that the people of Rwanda seem to have now figured out a way to coexist?
Well, still, we cannot forget how all these superpowers stood on the sidelines and watched people die, saying those are ethnic fights. But you see, the reason why they never came in to help Rwanda was not
oil.
Thank you. It wasn't because it was an ethnic thing, because they've gone into Somalia or Afghanistan and Iraq saying it is an ethnic thing or it is religious. Yet in Rwanda, there was nothing for them to gain. So if there is nothing to gain, you're going to kill each other. That's why people died in northern Uganda, and no one was lifting a finger, because what is in northern Uganda? It is now that they're discovering that there is great wealth in the region. Maybe had they known then, they would have swooped in and tried to play helper, as they, take away everything that we stand for as a country.
Let's just say I maintain a position of cynicism when it comes to notions of intervention. I honestly think that in the long run, it's usually better to leave people to figure out their own issues. And even though it may lead to some initial pain, in the long run, I feel like the results will be more favorable.
To a degree, because you see, the reason why President Kagame is actually feared and respected is because he can now stand on his own 2 feet and call them out. And it's like, when we needed you, you were not here. So you're not going to come into my country and tell me how to run things. Yet when I needed you, when my country was on its knees and it needed your help, you couldn't. Maybe when you look at it like that, in the long run, there are advantages to it, but in the short run, when people are dying, it's not an easy cup.
So for how much longer should we be in Somalia?
that depends.
I think
what
we should
do we
leave.
Gain as a country?
We should leave. We should leave, because now,
honestly, if people are being killed for trying to maintain peace in a foreign land.
Because what's going to happen is Uganda, let's say we launch a retaliatory attack, we go after one of their bases. More people are going to die, and guess what Al-Shabab will do? They'll again try and stage more attacks.
They might come back here inland in Uganda and attack us like they did in 2010.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is not what we want. We would rather we pull out of Somalia, and we've done our part. No one will ever say that Uganda didn't help. We did. We have a strong army in the region, and it has done its part. So, because if we are going to risk the lives of Ugandans, on Saturday I was at Chadondo Rugby Grounds. I'd not been since the bombings.
Really?
Yes. So on Saturday I was there. It was full house. There was a game between Ugandan rugby veterans and Kenyan rugby veterans, and of course we were beat. 43-3. I don't know what Ugandans be doing as other
43-3.
Yes.
That's
Kenya 43, Uganda 3.
That's a massacre.
It was a massacre. And one Kenyan friend asked me, what do you guys be doing as other people are practicing? But anyway, that's a story for
maybe the grounds are.
No, we are not going to blame that. We are not going to fight or blame our tools. That's the job of a bad workman. But when I was there, I was like, imagine if these guys struck again.
Yeah, very easily, many lives would be claimed.
And young lives.
Yeah.
Young lives.
So that's why I honestly think we should think about it, as it may not sound like a very tasteful idea. I mean, I know reflexively we're like, no, let's help, but are you really helping? Sometimes the best way to help is to not help. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Keep listening to the Fatboy Show on RX Radio.